The warehouse was quiet, except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant rumble of late-night traffic. I sat in my supervisor's office, nursing cold coffee and going over inventory reports when I heard Taryn's voice drifting through the thin walls. "You're so much better than him, Colt. God, I can't even remember the last time Derrick made me feel this way." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Her giggle was like nails on a chalkboard. After 10 years of marriage, you'd think I'd be the one getting midnight calls that made my wife sound like a teenager. I pressed my ear against the door. Taryn was in the break room, phone pressed tight to her face, thinking she was alone. "I know, baby. Just a few more weeks and I'll figure out how to tell him, maybe after his birthday. I don't want to seem like a complete monster." My hands clenched into fists. Colt Rainer, her college ex-boyfriend who'd been just catching up for the past 3 months, the same Colt who drove a Tesla and lived in a downtown penthouse while I supervised forklifts in a warehouse that smelled like motor oil and broken dreams. "Derrick's working late again anyway. He'll never know I called you. He's so wrapped up in his little kingdom here, ordering around high school dropouts and pretending he matters." That stung worse than the cheating. I'd worked my ass off to get this supervisor position. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid our mortgage and kept food on the table. Apparently that wasn't enough for Taryn anymore. I heard her footsteps heading toward the exit and quickly sat back down, pretending to study shipping manifests. She poked her head into my office, all fake smiles and guilt. "Hey, honey, I'm heading home. Don't stay too late, okay?" "Sure thing, babe. Just finishing up these reports." She kissed my forehead like I was her kid brother. "You work too hard, Derrick. Maybe we should take that vacation we talked about." The vacation she'd been postponing for months while she rekindled her romance with Mr. Tech Entrepreneur. "Sounds good. We'll talk about it at home." After she left, I sat there stewing. Taryn thought I was some clueless blue-collar drone who'd never figure out her little game. She was about to learn how wrong she was. I pulled out my phone and opened our family tracking app. We'd installed it 2 years ago for safety, but now it was going to serve a different purpose. Taryn's phone showed her location as home, but when I checked Colt's social media, his latest Instagram story showed him at his apartment building downtown. 20 minutes later, I was parked across from Colt's building. Taryn's Honda was in the visitor parking, right next to his Tesla Model S, the same car he'd been bragging about on Facebook for months. I sat there for an hour, watching their silhouettes move around his 20th floor windows. My wife was up there, probably naked, doing things with him she hadn't done with me in years. The humiliation burned in my chest like acid, but humiliation was about to become someone else's problem. I walked over to Colt's precious Tesla and pulled out my keys. One long scratch down the driver's side, deep enough to reach the metal. Then I knelt down and used my pocket knife to put a nice hole in his front tire. The hiss of escaping air was music to my ears. For the finishing touch, I left a note under his windshield wiper. "Hope you enjoyed the ride tonight. Your wife's technique has really improved since college. Yours truly, Derrick Mallon." I was walking back to my truck when I heard a camera click. Mrs. Henderson from our neighborhood was standing by the building entrance with her phone out. "Evening, Derrick. Fancy seeing you here." Shit. Mrs. Henderson was the neighborhood gossip queen and Taryn's jogging buddy. This was not good. "Just had to drop something off for a friend," I said, trying to sound casual. "At midnight? How thoughtful." Her smile was predatory. "I'm sure Taryn will be interested to hear about your late-night errands." I got in my truck and drove home, my heart pounding. Within minutes, my phone buzzed with a text from Taryn. "Kathy Henderson says she saw you downtown tonight. What were you doing there?" I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, "Working late, remember? Must have been someone else." But I knew the game had changed. Taryn would be more careful now, and I'd have to get smarter. This was just the beginning. The next morning, Taryn was different, colder. She made coffee for herself, but not for me, and kept checking her phone every few minutes. When I tried to kiss her goodbye, she turned her head so I got her cheek instead of her lips. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Fine, just tired." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. "I might be late tonight. Big presentation tomorrow." Another lie. I'd learned to recognize them by now. The way she avoided eye contact. The slight upturn in her voice at the end of sentences, like she was asking permission to deceive me. At work, I couldn't concentrate. My crew noticed I was distracted, and productivity suffered. Around lunch, my boss Jake pulled me aside. "What's eating you, Mallon? You've been walking around like someone shot your dog." Jake was old school, the kind of guy who'd worked his way up from the loading dock. He'd been married to the same woman for 30 years and still brought her flowers every Friday. "Just some stuff at home," I said. "Woman trouble?" I nodded. "Want some advice?" "Whatever she did, either forgive her or leave her. Don't do this half-assed misery thing. It's poison." If only it were that simple. But Jake didn't understand. This wasn't just about forgiveness. This was about respect, about not being treated like some pathetic cuckold who'd smile and take it. That evening, Taryn came home at 9:30, claiming she'd grabbed dinner with coworkers after the presentation. Her hair was messed up and her lipstick was gone, but she expected me to believe she'd been discussing quarterly sales figures for 5 hours. "How'd the presentation go?" I asked from the couch. "Great, really great. Mr. Peterson loved it." She was already heading upstairs. "I'm exhausted. Going to take a shower and go to bed." Peterson was her boss, a married man in his 50s who'd never shown interest in anything but profit margins. But Colt's business partner was named Peterson. Interesting coincidence. While she was in the shower, I checked our phone bill online. 17 calls to Colt's number in the past 2 weeks, most of them lasting over an hour. Text messages at all hours, including some sent while she was supposedly in meetings. I was studying the call log when Taryn walked into the living room in her robe, hair wrapped in a towel. "What are you looking at?" "Just checking our data usage. Seems like we're going over our limit." She tensed. "Maybe we should upgrade our plan. Or maybe someone could make fewer phone calls." We stared at each other for a long moment. She knew that I knew, and I knew that she knew that I knew, but neither of us was ready to say it out loud yet. "I'm going to bed," she said finally. "Sweet dreams." The next few days passed in a haze of passive-aggressive warfare. Taryn started staying late at work regularly, always with elaborate explanations about projects and timelines. I responded by working extra shifts at the warehouse, partly to avoid being home and partly to build up some savings in case this whole thing went south. Then came the company party. Taryn's office threw a quarterly celebration at some upscale hotel downtown. She'd been talking about it for weeks, how important it was for her career, how she needed to network with the right people. She bought a new dress, got her hair done, spent an hour on makeup. "You look beautiful," I told her as we walked into the hotel ballroom. "Thanks." She was already scanning the room, looking for someone. "I need to go say hi to some clients. Can you get me a drink?" I headed to the bar while Taryn disappeared into the crowd. When I came back with her wine, I found her deep in conversation with a tall guy in an expensive suit. Even from behind, I recognized Colt Rainer. He looked exactly like I remembered from Taryn's college photos, just older and richer. Perfect teeth, perfect hair, the kind of confident smile that came from never having to worry about money. He had his hand on the small of Taryn's back, and she was laughing at something he'd said. I walked over and handed Taryn her wine. "Here you go, honey." She jumped like I'd electrocuted her. "Oh, Derrick, this is Colt Rainer. Colt, my husband Derrick." Colt extended his hand with that practiced businessman grip. "Nice to meet you, Derrick. Taryn's told me so much about you." I bet she had. "All good things, I hope." "Of course." His smile was perfectly calibrated, but his eyes were cold. "Taryn says you work in logistics?" "Warehouse management." I squeezed his hand a little harder than necessary. "And you're in tech, right?" "Software development. We're actually working on some supply chain optimization tools. Maybe we should talk sometime?" The condescension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Here was this rich prick, screwing my wife and offering to help me with my little blue-collar problems. "That sounds fascinating," I said. "Maybe you could come by the house sometime and tell me all about it." Taryn's face went pale. "Actually, Colt's really busy with his company." "I'd love to," Colt interrupted, still playing his game. "I'm always interested in real-world applications." We stood there smiling at each other like civilized men while planning each other's destruction. Finally, Taryn grabbed Colt's arm. "We should go find Mr. Peterson. He wanted to meet you." As they walked away, I heard her whisper urgently in his ear, probably warning him to be more careful, not to push the dumb husband too far. I spent the rest of the party watching them from across the room. They were good at pretending to be casual acquaintances, but I caught the little touches, the lingering looks, the way they leaned into each other when they talked. Everyone else saw successful professionals networking. I saw my wife falling in love with someone else. On the drive home, Taryn was quiet. "Interesting guy, that Colt," I said. "He's just a business contact. Seemed like you two knew each other pretty well." "We went to college together. I told you that." "Right. Small world." She stared out the window. "Derrick, are we okay? I feel like there's this tension between us lately." This was my chance. I could confront her, demand the truth, maybe save our marriage. Instead, I heard myself say, "We're fine, babe, just work stress." Because I wasn't ready to save our marriage anymore. I was ready to burn it down and make sure everyone got what they deserved. The transformation didn't happen overnight. It took weeks of careful planning, of swallowing my pride and playing the oblivious husband while I gathered evidence and prepared for war. First, I moved our savings into a separate account. Not all of it, just enough to make sure I'd have options when everything fell apart. Taryn never checked our finances anyway. She left all that boring stuff to me. Next, I started documenting everything. Screenshots of her call logs, photos of her car at Colt's building, copies of credit card statements showing expensive lunches and hotel charges. I even bought a small recording device and hid it in her car, though I felt sick doing it. The recordings were brutal. Hours of phone conversations with Colt, dissecting every aspect of our marriage and finding it lacking. According to my wife, I was boring, predictable, and disappointing in bed. Colt, meanwhile, was exciting, successful, and apparently hung like a horse. "I feel so guilty sometimes," Taryn said during one particularly painful call. "Derrick's not a bad guy. He's just limited. He's never going to be more than what he is right now." "You deserve better," Colt replied. "You're too smart, too beautiful to waste your life in some suburban prison. I know. I just need to figure out how to do this without destroying him completely. He's going to be so hurt." Their concern for my feelings was touching, really. Almost made up for the fact that they were planning to blow up my life. The breaking point came when I discovered Taryn's cloud backup. She'd given me the password years ago for some forgotten reason and apparently never changed it. Her photo stream was a goldmine of evidence. Selfies in Colt's apartment, intimate pictures I definitely wasn't supposed to see, screenshots of text conversations where they mocked everything from my job to my performance in bed. But the real treasure was a group chat called Girls' Night that included Taryn, her sister, and 2 coworkers. The conversations were vicious. Derrick asked about taking a vacation again, Taryn had written. I told him we couldn't afford it right now. Meanwhile, Colt wants to take me to Cabo next month. "Just divorce him already," her sister replied. "You're wasting your best years." "It's complicated. The house is in both our names, and I don't want to give up my half. Plus, Derrick's the type who'd make it ugly out of spite." She was right about that last part. I was absolutely going to make it ugly. The group chat also revealed something interesting. Colt's wife Maya was friends with one of Taryn's co-workers. Apparently, Maya had no idea her husband was cheating. She was busy planning their anniversary party while he was planning weekend getaways with my wife. That gave me an idea. I created an anonymous email account and sent Maya a carefully curated selection of screenshots. Nothing too explicit, just enough to raise questions. Photos of Colt and Taryn at restaurants, text messages about meeting up, call logs showing hours of conversation. The subject line read, "Thought you should know." Maya's response came within hours. "Who is this? How did you get these photos?" I replied, "A friend. Your husband is having an affair with Derrick Mallon. I have more evidence if you need it." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because nobody deserves to be lied to." Maya went quiet for a day. Then she sent a single message. "Can we meet?" We arranged to meet at a coffee shop downtown, far from anywhere we might be recognized. Maya turned out to be a petite blonde with sharp eyes and an expensive handbag. She looked like she'd been crying, but her voice was steady. "You're Derrick," she said. It wasn't a question. "How'd you know?" "Process of elimination. You're the only one with a motive to expose them." She slid a manila folder across the table. I did some digging of my own. The folder contained bank statements showing payments to hotels, restaurants, and jewelry stores, credit card receipts for flowers and expensive dinners, even a receipt for lingerie from a boutique Taryn had never shopped at with me. "Colt's been using our joint account to finance his affair," Maya said. "Thousands of dollars over the past few months. Money I thought was going to business expenses. What are you going to do?" "That depends. How far are you willing to go?" I studied her face. Maya wasn't just hurt. She was furious. The kind of cold, calculating fury that made dangerous allies. "As far as it takes," I said. "Good, because I have an idea." Maya's plan was elegant in its simplicity. Colt's company was hosting a big product launch party next month with investors, clients, and media coverage. Taryn would be there as his business contact, probably wearing another new dress bought with my money. "We're going to expose them publicly," Maya said, "in front of everyone who matters to their careers." "Won't that hurt you too?" "I'm divorcing him either way, but this way I get to control the narrative. Poor betrayed wife versus cheating husband and his home-wrecking mistress." We spent 2 hours planning every detail. Maya would handle the technical aspects. She had access to Colt's laptop and could load our evidence onto his presentation system. I would handle the distraction, making sure they were both in the room when the show started. As we were leaving, Maya grabbed my arm. "Derrick, when this is over, they're going to hate us." "Good," I said. "I'm tired of being the only one who's miserable." That night, Taryn came home late again, full of apologies and explanations. She'd stopped trying to hide her lies, probably figuring I was too stupid or too trusting to catch on. "How was your day?" she asked, kissing my cheek with lips that had probably been on Colt an hour earlier. "Same as always, just living my limited little life." She gave me a sharp look. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing, babe, just tired." But I wasn't tired anymore. For the first time in months, I felt energized. The old Derrick would have confronted her directly, begged for explanations, maybe even tried to win her back. The new Derrick was going to watch her world burn and roast marshmallows in the flames. 2 weeks until the product launch party. 2 weeks to make sure I had everything I needed to destroy them both. I was actually starting to look forward to it. The morning of Colt's product launch party, Taryn spent 3 hours getting ready. She'd bought another new dress, this one a sleek black number that probably cost more than I made in a week. Her hair was perfect, her makeup flawless, her jewelry carefully chosen to look expensive but not ostentatious. "You look incredible," I told her as she checked herself in the mirror one last time. "Thanks." She seemed nervous, fidgeting with her earrings. "Are you sure you don't want to come? It might be good for your business to meet some of these people." The invitation was half-hearted, probably driven by guilt rather than genuine desire for my company. She wanted me there about as much as she wanted a root canal. "Nah, you go network. I'll just hold you back." Relief flashed across her face. "Okay, I'll probably be late, so don't wait up." After she left, I took a long shower and put on my best suit. Maya and I had coordinated our timing perfectly. She'd arrive early to set up our little surprise, and I'd show up just as the presentation was starting. The venue was a trendy downtown hotel with floor-to-ceiling windows and modern art on the walls. Colt had rented the entire top floor, complete with an open bar and catered appetizers. I could see why Taryn was impressed. This was the kind of sophisticated event she'd always wanted to be part of. I spotted her immediately, standing near the bar with a glass of wine in her hand. She was laughing at something Colt had said, her face glowing with the kind of happiness I hadn't seen in months. He had his hand on her back again, that possessive gesture I'd learned to hate. Maya was across the room, playing the perfect supportive wife. She caught my eye and nodded slightly. Everything was ready. Colt stepped up to the microphone at the front of the room. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight as we launch the next phase of Rainer Technologies." The crowd quieted down, turning their attention to the large screen behind him. Maya had done her work well. Our evidence was loaded and ready to go, disguised as part of his presentation slides. "Before we talk about our exciting new products," Colt continued, "I'd like to share something personal with all of you." He clicked to the next slide, expecting to see his company logo. Instead, a photo filled the screen. Colt and Taryn in a passionate embrace, taken in his apartment bedroom. The room went silent. Colt stared at the screen in horror, frantically clicking his remote. But Maya had locked him out of the system. The next slide was even worse. Screenshots of their text messages, including several explicit photos and detailed discussions of their encounters. "What the hell?" Colt started, but his voice was drowned out by the murmur of shocked conversations. I watched Taryn's face go white as her most intimate secrets were displayed for everyone to see. Her coworkers, her boss, potential clients, all of them now knew exactly what kind of person she really was. The slides kept coming. Bank records showing Colt spending thousands on his affair. Screenshots of the group chat where Taryn mocked our marriage. Even some of the recorded phone conversations playing through the hotel's sound system. "This is unacceptable," someone shouted. "Get this thing turned off." But Maya had thought of everything. The presentation was on a timer, and the system was locked down tight. For the next 10 minutes, everyone in that room was going to see exactly who Colt Rainer and Derrick Mallon really were. I pushed through the crowd toward Taryn, who was standing frozen by the bar. Her wine glass had fallen from her hand, leaving a red stain on her perfect dress. "Having fun?" I asked. She turned to me with tears streaming down her face. "Derrick, please, I can explain." "No need. I think the presentation covered everything pretty thoroughly." Colt had given up on the microphone and was trying to physically disconnect the projector. But the damage was done. Half the room was recording the chaos on their phones, and I could already see people posting to social media. "You did this," Taryn whispered. "You sick, vindictive bastard." I just shared some information with interested parties. kind of like what you've been doing with Colt for the past few months." Her boss, Mr. Peterson, appeared at her elbow. His face was red with anger and embarrassment. "Taryn, we need to talk. Now." As they walked away, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Maya had appeared beside me, her face serene despite the chaos around us. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Honestly, pretty good." The presentation finally ended, leaving the room in stunned silence. Colt stood at the front, his face ashen, his career in ruins. Several investors were already heading for the exits, and I could hear angry conversations about pulled funding and severed partnerships. Taryn came back from her conversation with Peterson looking like she'd been hit by a truck. "I'm fired," she said numbly. "Effective immediately, for conduct unbecoming an employee." "That's rough," I said. "Guess you'll have more time to spend with Colt now." She slapped me, hard. The sound echoed through the room, and suddenly everyone was staring at us again. "You destroyed everything," she hissed. "My job, my reputation, my future. Was it worth it?" I rubbed my cheek. "Ask me again in a few months." Security was starting to clear the room, and I decided it was time to make my exit. As I walked toward the elevator, I passed Colt, who was frantically trying to explain to a group of investors that this was all a misunderstanding. "Derrick," he called out, "we need to talk." I stopped and turned around. "What's to talk about? I think we understand each other perfectly now." "You've ruined both our lives over a simple mistake." "Mistake?" I laughed. "Colt, you've been screwing my wife for months. You've been spending your wife's money to finance it. You've been planning to destroy my marriage while pretending to be my friend. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. And choices have consequences." He took a step toward me, his hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might actually try to fight me, but then he seemed to remember where we were, surrounded by phones and cameras, and backed down. "This isn't over," he said. "You're right," I replied. "It's just getting started." The divorce proceedings were a complete disaster. Taryn hired an expensive lawyer and tried to paint me as an abusive husband who'd violated her privacy and destroyed her career out of jealousy. I countered with evidence of her adultery and financial infidelity, including records of money she'd spent on gifts for Colt using our joint accounts. The recording I'd made of her phone conversations was inadmissible in court, but the photos, text messages, and financial records told the story clearly enough. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Jennifer Walsh, had dealt with plenty of cheating spouses over the years. "Your wife made this easy for us," she told me during one of our meetings. "She documented everything herself. The photos, the messages, even the group chat where she admits to planning the affair. Most cheaters try to hide their tracks." Taryn always was overconfident. Well, her overconfidence is going to cost her. With the adultery evidence, you'll keep the house and most of your assets. She might even have to pay you alimony, depending on how vindictive you want to be. I thought about that. A year ago, the idea of taking money from Taryn would have seemed petty and cruel. Now it sounded like justice. "Let's go for the throat," I said. The final hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late spring. Taryn showed up looking haggard and defeated. She'd lost weight, and there were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. Unemployment and public humiliation had taken their toll. Colt wasn't there, of course. According to Maya, who'd become an unexpected friend over the past few months, his company had folded after the product launch disaster. Investors had pulled their funding, clients had canceled contracts, and several business partners had sued him for breach of fiduciary duty. He'd moved back in with his parents in Ohio, tail between his legs. Maya, meanwhile, had gotten everything in their divorce. The penthouse, the cars, the investment portfolio, all of it. She'd also started her own consulting business and was doing quite well for herself. "Funny how things work out," she'd told me over coffee the week before. 6 months ago, I was just some rich man's trophy wife. Now I'm in control of my own life. The judge was a stern older woman who clearly had no patience for marital drama. She listened to both sides present their cases, reviewed the evidence, and made her decision quickly. "Mr. Mallon, you'll retain sole ownership of the marital home and primary custody of all joint assets. Mrs. Mallon, you'll be responsible for your own legal fees and will pay spousal support in the amount of $1,500 per month for the next 2 years. Taryn's lawyer objected, but the judge was firm. Adultery had consequences, especially when it was as well documented as this case. As we left the courthouse, Taryn grabbed my arm in the parking lot. "Are you happy now?" she asked. "You've taken everything from me." "I didn't take anything," I said. "You threw it all away for a few months of excitement with a guy who dumped you the minute things got complicated." "Colt didn't dump me? Really? When's the last time you talked to him?" "Because Maya says he blocked your number 2 weeks ago." Her face crumpled. You don't understand. What we had was real. Maybe it was, but it wasn't worth destroying 2 marriages and 4 lives over. She started crying then, standing in the courthouse parking lot in her cheap dress and scuffed shoes. The confident, ambitious woman I'd married was gone, replaced by someone broken and desperate. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I need that money, Derrick. The alimony. I can't find work anywhere. Every time I interview somewhere, they Google my name and find those pictures, those stories. My reputation is destroyed. You should have thought about that before you decided to humiliate me publicly for months. I never meant for it to go this far. I was going to tell you. I was going to ask for a divorce properly. When? After you'd figured out how to screw me out of the house? After you'd moved in with Colt and left me with nothing but the bills? She didn't have an answer for that. The alimony payments start next month, I said. Don't be late. I got in my truck and drove away, leaving her standing there alone. In the rearview mirror, I could see her shoulders shaking as she sobbed. That evening, I was at Murphy's bar celebrating with a few guys from work when my phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. This is all your fault. I hope you're happy. I showed it to Jake, who'd insisted on buying me drinks to celebrate my freedom. Crazy ex-wife? He asked. Probably. They always blame you for their own mistakes. My first wife tried to say I drove her to cheat by working too much, like I was supposed to apologize for paying the bills. I was about to put my phone away when it buzzed again. This time it was a photo. Taryn's apartment, a rundown place in a bad part of town. The message read, "This is where your wife of 10 years is living now. Still feel good about yourself?" I blocked the number and ordered another beer. Whoever was sending those messages could go to hell. Taryn had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences, just like I'd had to live with the consequences of trusting her. Around midnight, as I was getting ready to call it a night, my phone rang. It was Maya. "Turn on Channel 7, she said. "You need to see this." I found a TV in the corner of the bar and switched to the local news. The anchor was talking about a domestic disturbance in downtown, showing footage of police cars and ambulances outside a familiar-looking apartment building. The incident appears to have been a suicide attempt by a local woman who made headlines earlier this year during a public adultery scandal. The woman, identified as Taryn Mallon, was found by neighbors and taken to City General Hospital in stable condition. The beer in my hand suddenly tasted like ash. Around me, the bar noise faded to a distant hum as I stared at the screen. "Jesus Christ," Jake muttered. "Isn't that your ex?" I couldn't answer. On the screen, they were showing file footage from Colt's product launch party, the night I'd destroyed Taryn's life in front of a room full of strangers. She looked so confident in that old footage, so sure of herself. My phone was ringing again. Maya. "Derrick, are you there?" "Yeah." "This isn't your fault. You know that, right? She made her own choices." But as I sat there watching the news coverage, I wasn't sure I believed that anymore. Yes, Taryn had cheated on me. Yes, she'd lied and humiliated me and planned to leave me with nothing. But had she deserved this? Had anyone deserved this? The reporter was interviewing neighbors now, people talking about how Taryn had seemed depressed and isolated in recent months. One woman mentioned seeing her crying on the fire escape late at night, talking to herself. "The victim left a note," the reporter continued, "but police aren't releasing its contents at this time. Sources close to the investigation say it mentioned feelings of hopelessness and public humiliation following the breakdown of her marriage." I turned off the TV and walked out of the bar. In the parking lot, I sat in my truck for a long time, staring at my hands. These were the hands that had keyed Colt's car, that had planted recording devices, that had worked with Maya to orchestrate Taryn's public destruction. I'd wanted revenge, and I'd gotten it. Taryn had lost her job, her reputation, her marriage, her future. Colt had lost his company and his wife. I'd won everything I'd set out to win. So why did I feel like I was drowning? My phone buzzed with another text, this time from a number I recognized. "Taryn. I'm sorry, Derrick. For everything. I know you'll never forgive me, but I need you to know that I loved you once, before I ruined everything. I hope someday you can remember the good times instead of how it ended. Take care of yourself." I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. "I'm glad you're okay. Get help, Taryn. You deserve better than this." But I didn't send it. Instead, I deleted the message and drove home to my empty house, where I'd spend the rest of my life wondering if winning had been worth the price we'd all paid. The next morning, I found out Taryn had been released from the hospital and was staying with her sister in another state. The suicide attempt had been a cry for help more than a serious attempt to fade, but it had shaken everyone who knew her. I never saw her again after that courthouse parking lot. The alimony payments went to an account managed by her sister, and eventually they stopped altogether when Taryn found work in a different city under her maiden name. Colt disappeared entirely, last heard from working at a tech support company in Cleveland for a fraction of what he'd once made. Maya and I stayed friends, bonding over our shared experience of betrayal and revenge. She eventually started dating again, a quiet accountant who treated her like gold. As for me, I kept working at the warehouse, kept living in the house Taryn and I had shared, kept telling myself that I'd done what I had to do, that they'd deserved what they got, that justice had been served. But late at night, when the house was quiet and I was alone with my thoughts, I sometimes wondered if the man I'd become was any better than the people I'd destroyed. If winning a war meant losing your soul, was it really a victory? I never found a good answer to that question, but I learned to live with it, the same way I learned to live with everything else. One day at a time, carrying the weight of my choices, knowing that some victories cost more than defeats ever could. In the end, I'd gotten my revenge. I'd shown them all that the boring, limited warehouse supervisor was capable of more than they'd imagined. I'd proven that underestimating me was a mistake. The problem was, I'd proven it to myself too. And that knowledge would follow me for the rest of my life, a constant reminder that we're all capable of becoming the villain in someone else's story, even when we think we're the hero in our own.